Hey everyone, welcome to Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and these are some comics. Today I want to experiment. I want to do my first episode of a commentary show. I'm not sure how long this will go, how good I am at doing this. I just want to kind of talk about some things that are going on in comics, and not actually specific comics themselves per se. I want to start it off with DC doing it right. You can see my awesome pro show notes that I made here when I wanted to do the show. I kind of wanted to organize some of my thoughts, what I want to talk about, because I have a problem with that. You'll probably notice that I can get on rambling, and then kind of my thoughts will pause, and it'll be really disjointed sounding. And I'm aware of that. It's not easy to have a coherent stream of thought and just keep going. Some people are really good at it, like Ethan Van Sciver, my boy Zach. It would be something I would really like to work on. So I thought I would just write down what I wanted to do, and you can see this is high professionalism here. So starting with DC doing it right, this is something that I've been a big advocate for. In comics, I was out of comics for like 20 years. Before that, though, I was a major Marvel fan. And my biggest things were X-Men. X-Men is what got me into comics. And then that introduced me to the world of the Marvel Universe, to which I explored some of my favorite comics growing up. And then in my early 20s, I collected for about a decade. Were like Iron Man, Thor, some of the X-title spin-offs. Particularly, I liked X-Factor when the old X-Men left, and they became the all different X-Factor under Peter David. I liked Daredevil. My stepfather introduced me to Daredevil, and specifically I believe it's Born Again. I apologize that I'm not remembering. There's so many Born, like with Rebirth and all this is used so much that I mix these subtitles up. But you guys should all know this one, the famous Frank Miller run with Kingpin discovers Matt Murdock as Daredevil, and it's awesome. It's probably, if there was a Hall of Fame of top 10 comic book stories ever, this would be in it. It's that good. Seek it out. It's widely available in trades. Dave Mazzucchelli art, same guy who did Batman Year One. That made me like Daredevil. It made me also love Frank Miller, which linked me to my only really connection to DC, which was the Frank Miller Batman at the time. I loved it. Loved Dark Knight Returns. Basically became a huge Frank Miller fanboy. Anything that guy did, I sought out. But I didn't really otherwise like DC. I thought Batman was a cool character, and Frank Miller made him amazing. And, of course, during those days when comic book movies were just not something that you would look forward to. Well, you did look forward to them, but you were always disappointed. I mean, comic book movies were terrible. Terrible. Oh my gosh. Go back and look at the Dolph Lundgren Punisher if you want to see an example. So when the 1989, when the Batman movie came out, that movie just floored people. And I think that movie is probably one of the most overrated movies of all time, in my opinion. I go back and look at that and go, why did we like this movie so much? And honestly, it's because it was so much better relatively to what we were used to. All right, suffice that to say, I'm off on a tangent. Fast forward to today, I don't buy any Marvel. I think Marvel is trash. I want to buy Marvel. Those are my characters that I grew up and loved. Spider-Man. I forgot to mention. Perennial favorite. One of my friends, I remember I used to think Spider-Man was stupid. One of my friends convinced me to try it and see him from a certain angle, which was the comedy angle. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize comics could be like this. The whole smarmy, shit-talking kind of antics that he did When Spider-Man is done right, Spider-Man is tons of fun. So I came back into comics. Actually, I stayed away from comics for so long, primarily because, I went through the bust, big comic book bust, and moved on to other interests in my life. When you're in your 20s, you're discovering yourself and you have other interests, and just it faded. And when you don't have other friends and other people that are sharing the interest with you, it's kind of easy to lose or forget how much you liked it as you're moving on to other things. But it's always been in the back of my mind. When comic book movies came out, started being good, like, man, when the Iron Man movie came out, I was blown away. And I've always loved it. That's always been in the back of my mind. It's always been a part of my DNA. And there's been a few times, like when Iron Man came out, that I was like, oh, maybe I should check out some comics again. But nothing ever drew me in because the comics just weren't really that good anymore. They weren't exciting. And there was one particular time where I was going into comics because I've dabbled into other related hobbies that often bring you into comic book stores. There was a time where I played Magic the Gathering. Well, several times I played Magic the Gathering, but one time I was very big into it and tried to play competitively, and that would bring you in, sometimes, comic book shops sell Magic the Gathering, so you're in there and so forth. I'm a very much a gamer of all sorts. I love board games. I love video games. Big into board games. Not the stuff that everyone thinks about, like Monopoly and Scrabble and all. It's like, if you're not aware, there's a massive sort of hobby board game market with designer gamers, and it's kind of in a renaissance right now. And there's some really amazing stuff. And like comics, you can follow your favorite designers, and the games will actually increase in value. I think the board game industry, this might actually be a topic, the board game industry might have hijacked a lot of comic collectors because it offers what they liked about the hobby. So I get back into this hobby because of pretty much diversity in comics and his passion, and he's calling it like it is and pointing out all the crap that's going on in the industry. And here I am, following and just being like, oh wow, I can't believe what's going on. This is crazy. And it's like a circus sideshow. I'm just pulling up the popcorn, listening to him, and watching the train wreck, so to speak. But then he did something besides just roasting the bad comics. He would find the good gems here and there. And his passion for the comics and his love was very much in line with the way I feel about the comics when they're good. And I missed that. I was like, man, I miss being into this hobby. I miss having friends who were people similar to Zach who, had the same enthusiasm. It was fun. It was fun to read the stories, but also fun to share the experiences with others. And I really liked what he was doing. For about 6 months, I watched him. And then I decided, man, I got that itch. I want to get a couple of comics. I don't want to just be on the sidelines anymore. I want to be current with some of the stuff that's going on so I can participate. Because at this time, I was starting to discover other people who were getting in the conversation. One of the guys I follow very closely, who's not really a big YouTuber or anything, but his name's Trajan. And if you think there's any value of what I'm doing, you should watch his channel. He's better than me. He just is not very prolific. I wish he would do more reviews and more comic discussion. But so I saw what he was doing, and I was like, man, I kind of could do that. Just, not because I want to be, I think anyone's going to want to hear what I have to say so much. But even if a couple people want to hear what I have to say, I think when I started watching his channel, he had about 100 subscribers. And that's what inspired me. It was more like, hey, this guy's not doing it because he wants to be a YouTube star. He's doing it because he loves comics and he likes to talk about them. And that's what my motivation was. I was like, if I can do it for that reason, I can do it. So here I am today, and I'm buying DC Comics because pretty much that's what's good. And DC is doing it right. I was shocked. I was shocked when I started reading Superman, which I always thought was kind of dull character. I never thought he was bad. I really love the idea of Superman. I always just thought he was a very difficult type of character to do month in and month out. To me, Superman was one of those, he's such a monolith. And when he would appear, when he would guest star, one of his most famous appearances in The Dark Knight Returns, it carried a lot of weight to me. I was like, wow, this character is amazing. But to see him every day being Superman, I was like, what? This guy's a god. What can't he do? That's going to run old. So I wasn't sure that I could ever enjoy Superman. But I picked up the Rebirth Superman. I picked up the first trade for the Rebirth series of DC. And Tomasi's writing just hooked me. I loved what they were doing with it. And I fell in love with Superman's son, Jonathan Kent, which really surprised me because I hate legacy characters. At the risk of going off on another tangent I won't talk about, I'll save that for another time. But suffice it to say, I don't like legacy characters, but he changed my mind. I ended up transitioning and reading Super Sons, which on the cover I thought I would hate. Loved it. Great book. And just kind of going off on the recommendation, Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps is something I pick up. I was picking up Action Comics as well. I figured I would stay into that. And then the whole Bendis thing came, and I'll get to that later. Another thing that attracted me to DC was this new age of heroes. New age of heroes it's too early to say, oh my god, it's great. But it's cool. It's very good. It reminds me a lot of Marvel's New Universe, if you're that old, if you can go back that far. I wanted to love New Universe so bad. When New Universe came out, I bought all the books. I collected all of them pretty much until they got canceled. I still have a short box. Doesn't fill that much, about a short box of New Universe books. And it sucks that it failed. And I know why it failed. It should have failed. They made one major, FUBAR problem with it, which I won't discuss there. But suffice it to say, the idea, the concept was exciting because it was new characters. I want to read about Iron Man. I want to read about Superman. These are all characters that have been around for decades. And that's great. But sometimes something new is exciting. You get to follow a character from their beginning. And New Age of Heroes was doing that. And DC is in very much need of this. One of the biggest things that ever kept me away from DC is that they pretty much had 3 heroes that a mainstream normie like me at the time would even care about. And that was Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And they know this because, they consistently write books with just those 3. They have books with the Trinity for a while. DC knows this. Then they've got their subsidiary characters that are only even really relevant, in my opinion, because of Justice League. And that's Aquaman, Green Lantern, and Flash. And you might say, oh, how dare you? These are great books. And I will not argue with that. But what I'm saying is characters. Just, if I draw a pinup and I draw this character and you don't know much about him and I just tell you his name, how interested at that point are you? This is the problem that DC has. They can then get great writers to go in and write great backstories and great world building and tell really great stories with these characters. This fact, I understand right now Aquaman is supposed to be tremendous. That's different. That is proving that you can make a success of this character. The problem that DC has is selling you on the cover. And Aquaman, Green Lantern, and Flash, in my opinion, don't sell based on that. They've had to take decades and decades to build these characters up and get people to go, okay. And I really hope this Aquaman movie succeeds. I think it's gonna that's going to change Aquaman forever. I think like the Wonder Woman movie was phenomenal. Like it's not just as being a movie, but as far as changing hearts and minds, and people go, oh, DC's got something besides Batman and Superman, and it can be cool. So suffice that to say, people are arguing with me, yeah, all those characters are being done well. Tom King's Batman is having a little bit of issues right now as far as controversy. But if you take that out of the equation, all those titles are all doing good. In fact, there's 2 Green Lantern titles. And Aquaman has a spin-off miniseries with Mera. There is no dissension, really. Batman is the only one. And I would probably argue it's because Batman is DC's biggest character. I mean, this guy is the most sacred, I think. People say, oh, Superman's more sacred. Yeah, because he's harder to tweak. I mean, he has to follow a certain mold or fans will go ballistic. Batman can go many different directions. He's the one that keeps the ship afloat. It's like X-Men back in the 80s and 90s from Marvel. You know, Spider-Man and Captain America were the faces of Marvel, but X-Men was the one that everybody loved. That it outsold everything else. People love Batman, and so if it's a mediocre Batman, people complain. People expect Batman to always be fantastic. If Aquaman's not great, they go, whatever, it's Aquaman. So one of the things I like about DC doing it right is they are hiring good writers, good artists, and they are editing them. This is a trinity, I think, of the comic book industry, at least the mainstream comic book industry. You put these 3 things together, you will get good comics. Properly regulated talent produces. Overly regulated talent can be another story, but DC is getting good talent. They're finding what their strengths are, putting them on the right books, putting decent artists on. Not always the best, but never terrible. Oh my gosh, I was flipping through a recent issue of Daredevil, and people are like, oh, Daredevil's one of the good Marvel books right now. And I was like, okay, I've heard that I think his name's Charles Soule is the writer. And I was like, yeah, I've heard good things about him, so I believe that it's probably a good book. And I flipped through it, and I was like, whoa, what the... The art is so bad. So, I am not exaggerating. I am not a comic book artist. I did dabble with it because of my love for comics when I was in high school and I used to sketch and draw. I didn't have the discipline to keep up with it. But I took my little turns at creating my characters and drawing, and I would draw some panels of comics with my characters, and I was better than that Daredevil book. It is that bad. I cannot believe that Marvel is putting one of their top characters in the hands of artists. Like, I don't understand. DC not doing that. You may have artists that are just like, it's not really like his style, whatever, but they're quality. They know how to do storytelling. Finally, I want to talk about Vertigo. Right now, Vertigo is kind of a laughingstock, at least in this side of comics that I'm in. I look at it from a different perspective. I think DC's doing the right thing with Vertigo. I think DC understands, well, look, we've got a lot of artists, a lot of creators that have this SJW mindset. Instead of throwing them on our prime comics like Batman and Superman, and we're seeing the outrage and the backlash of the old school fans who don't want that, and they're the ones that pay the bills, why don't we give a different sandbox for these creators to work in? And I'm for this. I'm not this kind of person that thinks these people shouldn't do comics. I'm thinking that if you're writing an existing character for a company, like if you write Batman, I don't care what your personal beliefs are, your responsibility is to write Batman the way Batman should be. If Batman goes against your politics or your personal beliefs, too bad. You're writing DC's Batman for Batman fans. If you want to write a character that tells a story about your beliefs or pushes your beliefs, whatever, fine, that's great. Go do your character. And Vertigo allows these creators a place to go do these stories, and I, as a person who wants nothing to do with it, can go, cool, I'm not interested in those Vertigo books. Show me to these other books over here. And if you're a person who is interested in that, then you can say, sweet, I'm a major fan of Vertigo, I'm going to go buy those books. And everyone wins. That's, I think, a smart play. I am happy with this. Some people have, like I said, it's controversial. Some people think, oh, Vertigo's trash or whatever. But it's like, this is where it comes to that argument that not all comics are for you. Maybe Batman is for you, but Batman's not being infected. He's not a Vertigo comic. So I think if people change their perspective, I think my opinion is this is a good thing. I wish Marvel would do something like this, but whatever. So now it comes to DC doing the wrong thing. Canceling books. I used to be listening to people to be like, oh, DC's canceling Super Sons, and I would be like, yeah, so? But that was because I was kind of a jerk and I was prejudiced and I didn't think Super Sons was worth anything because I didn't read it and I was against legacy characters. I've always thought Superboy was stupid. I'd never liked Robin, and I've never liked the idea of Batman having a son, Damian Wayne, and then Damian Wayne is Robin. Everything just compounded to make Super Sons on paper sound like the worst comic ever. And so when people complained about it getting canceled, I was like, oh, whatever, no sympathy. But that was wrong. I'll admit it. I ended up picking up Super Sons, gave it a shot, and it was good. Really good. I'm glad. I'm glad that I kept a somewhat open mind and allowed my mind to be changed. Also, so this fast forwards now to Green Lantern. Green Lantern is getting canceled. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, to be specific, which consistently I see people reviewing, always say this is the most consistent good book in DC's lineup. I don't understand this. Whoa. They rebooted Superman. Superman, the rebirth Superman, is the Superman that got me to like Superman comics. Tomasi was doing fantastic. It didn't just get me to like Superman comics, it got me to explore and get into Super Sons. It was doing what a flagship character should do. It was promoting your line and representing you as a publisher. When people come to DC and they don't know anything about comics, chances are Batman or Superman is going to be what they get first. So it's important that those characters, these books, are top priority as far as writing and art. You want to put your best foot forward. Superman was doing it. I understand that they wanted to get Brian Michael Bendis. 100%. I didn't agree with all the people that were against him coming because of his SJW nonsense. Whatever. The guy transformed Marvel for a while when he came on and did Daredevil, and he was a big spark for comics and proved that he's been a big talent. He's proved that he can phone in and do crap, but any human being is capable of that. I believe that DC had a much stronger editorial staff, much stricter environment, wouldn't allow shenanigans, and under that environment, Bendis would be filtered so that only his talent shows. But I am not so 100% in agreement with how they brought him on. I mean, obviously they have to make some sort of deal with him, entice him to come. And I understand the business decisions of it, but you didn't have to reboot Superman to #1. You could have just said, okay, Tomasi, your role's ending. Bendis is going to pick up on this number, and we're going to put you over somewhere else. Fine. Keep the numbering going. I mean, this is going to be the third reboot of Superman in how many years? From like New 52, then Rebirth, and now Bendis. At least New 52 made sense why the reboot. It's like you're changing up the DC universe. And then Rebirth kind of makes sense because you're saying, oops, we effed up with New 52. Let's roll back, so to speak. So start the numbering again. But this whole Bendis thing, there's no, it's just a random restart. I don't like that. I think a lot of fans are not like that. And it's bad business. It's bad business because fans like to collect books, I think. Not everyone. I'm not speaking for you necessarily. But a lot of fans are like this. You buy your book. You get in every month or every other week. And you're getting your copy. And you're into it. And even if the book starts to go a little dull. If you're a fan of that book, you don't like having gaps in your collection. So even if Batman is getting a little bit stale right now, I'm going to keep buying it in hopes that it picks up again because I bought it for a reason. It's kind of like a marriage, you go in your ups and downs. Marriage starts going bad, you don't just immediately, pull the chute. You stick with it in hopes to make it better and go to better times. Most comic collectors, I think, are like this, and they will keep buying your book, and you have an opportunity to make them excited again. However, if they're kind of stale on your book and you cancel it, you just gave them an excuse to stop buying your book. You should not do that. Yes, you get an opportunity to have a flashy new #1 and get those big sales from all those speculators who are morons because #1s nowadays almost never become worth anything unless it's an unknown book like Walking Dead. Like, who thought Walking Dead was going to be anything? So obviously there's scarce copies of that #1 it's worth. But do you think Superman #1 is going to be worth anything? No, it's going to be tons of copies. There's going to be millions of variants. But people are going to buy it and buy multiple copies because, it's #1. No. So you're going to get those big sales on the #1, and then the sales are going to drastically decline. And meanwhile, those people that were just kind of you may have lost them for good. I don't agree with what you're doing. It's bad business. What's good business is getting Action Comics up to 1,000, getting Detective Comics up to 1,000. Superman should be at several hundred by now. That shows quality books that have been around. Should not be afraid of that. If you want #1s, go do this. New Age of Heroes. Make something special. So yes, DC. Oh shoot. The elephant in the room. Batman 50, The Wedding. Now I'm not going to spoil anything. The truth is I don't necessarily know 100%. And damn you, Captain Cummings, for spoiling something on your Twitter feed. Look, if you know something about a spoiler, if you know, DC did this, and you're pissed, rightly so, don't get on Twitter and be like, oh my god, I'm so pissed. Lucasfilm just spoiled that Darth Vader was Luke's father. Now you just spoiled it for everyone else. Now you're a jackass. You're the same thing you just bitched about. Don't do that. It's very easy to get on and say, hey, this was spoiled. I'm upset. Talk to me if you want to know why, or, put up some sort of warning. I literally read the spoiler. It was like one sentence. I couldn't not read it. Like, you catch a glimpse of the text, your body, or your mind, processes the information. And I was like, damn it. And now I'm seeing it everywhere, and I'm having like a filter. I can't read Twitter because all these people are spurging out about Batman #50, and they're revealing what they hate about it. And it's like, do you understand that other people don't want to be spoiled? Shut the hell up. Terrible, terrible thing that DC did. And I don't know if you read their senior vice president of sales, Cunningham, I think his name's John Cunningham, wrote this, I posted it on my Twitter. He wrote this like 4 or 5 part memo essentially explaining what they did. And it is so insulting. Basically tried to link it in with that cool Batman line. It's like, oh, this isn't the comic book we wanted, but it's the comic we needed. Shut the hell up. You effed up. You effed up, and you should be seriously reprimanded by whoever's above you. You are in a huge, important position. You get paid a shit ton of money to do what you're doing because of your responsibility. You effed up, and you're blaming fans. You're pointing out how we're wrong to be upset and how this is actually a good thing. No. You led up to this huge event, which, in my impression, most people don't even really care about. I think Batman getting married to Catwoman, terrible idea. Batman getting married to anyone is a terrible idea. I like the romance of Batman and Catwoman. I think what makes Batman and Catwoman interesting is it's the forbidden romance. It's the fact that there's this attraction and chemistry, and that it can never actually be, it's never actually meant to be. That's interesting. Tying the knot, making Batman a family man, is completely counter to what Batman is. No one wants to see it. No one who's a real Batman fan wants to see it. They want to see big events, sure. But ultimately, this is just a bad idea. But anyways, you're building it up, big event, okay, whatever. Batman 50. Like, remember when 50th issues were no big deal? It was like, oh my gosh, issue 300, can you believe it? Now it's like 50! In DC, that usually means we're canceling the book and starting over. So anyways, DC, wrong. And then you were way wrong. You reminded me of the United Airlines. Remember when United Airlines had that issue and they had that passenger, that doctor who would refuse to get off the plane? And they got those security guys, wherever, they grabbed him, and then they ended up dropping him, and he like broke his jaw. And then the public, it was all on video because, people have phones. And then the president of United Airlines got on and was just like basically blaming him and talking about he just made it so much worse by talking bad about passengers and all this stuff. And I was like, whoa, dude, you do not understand PR. Yeah, someone needed to shut up the senior vice president of sales. Like, what you do is you say, you know what? In our interest to publicize this event, we were very excited to talk with the New York Times, and we inadvertently, without thinking too much ahead, revealed parts of the story in our excitement, and fans were upset, and we realized that we were writing this ultimately for those fans, and it was a mistake, and we're very sorry. We ultimately want to make books for you, not the newspapers. We want you to enjoy these books. It was a mistake. You're angry, and we're going to learn from this mistake and move on and do our best to never let these things happen again. That's what you do. You eat crow. You apologize. You say, look, you guys pay us. We love you. We respect you. Thanks for being our customers. We're going to do our best to make these events something you're proud of and want more of. We'll learn from this. Move on. That's what you do. You don't get on and be like, well, you guys just aren't smart enough to understand what we're really trying to do, and it's actually a good thing that we spoiled, blah, 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 blah. No. Don't try to spin me. Makes me angry. That makes me more angry than the actual spoiling. Because you know what? You make mistakes. They're a business. They're trying to make money. It's a big event. New York Times wants to do a feature on it. I understand mistakes. It's how you handle mistakes that really show who you are. And DC has handled the mistake poorly. And it's bad for the comic book stores. Comic book stores are now getting cancellations. DC, what is DC doing for this? Nothing. This is terrible. Comic book stores are your bread and butter. This is the industry. Without comic book stores, you and Marvel both fail. So how do I say DC's doing it right after all that? Well, because, quite honestly, if you look back at any point in comics history or any other entertainment medium, failures happen. You have PR disasters, you have mistakes. Ultimately, these companies are made up of people. And these things I talked about with DC that I'm complaining are not the norm. When I say DC's doing it right versus Marvel, which I would say is doing it wrong, it's because these things happening at Marvel are the norm. Marvel does stupid things like Civil War II and The Secret Empire, and let's change all of our characters so that there are no white male main Marvel characters anymore. Literally, they made it so, except for like Punisher and Daredevil, I think were the only ones they missed. Every single white male character was changed. Thor, Captain America, Spider-Man, you name any primary lead character. Fans were outraged. Fans backlash. Marvel does things like Iceman. We're going to take a beloved character of 60 years, and we're not going to just make him gay. We're going to make him obnoxiously gay and an asshole, and we're going to write a book where he does nothing but get on Tinder and try to do hookups. It was insulting and outrageous to the fans, and it was a terrible book from just a writing standpoint, and it justly got canceled after, 9 issues? But that's not enough. You say, oh, Marvel, you did something, you made a mistake, we're going to try to... No, they're bringing it back. Same writer. That's doing it wrong. When you make a mistake, what you do from the mistake says a lot about your character. And Marvel is doing all the wrong things. DC's making mistakes, and then correct it. And overall, the good of what DC's doing, as far as a fan, for you as a buyer and a consumer, you have a lot to look forward to with DC. They're going to make some mistakes, they're going to piss you off. But you can't let that become outrage mentality. You can be mad, but understand there's a difference between being mad and then just looking to always be mad. So that's what I have to say about DC and the Batman thing. Next I want to talk about pro Twitter accounts. This video is getting long. I'm going to skip pro Twitter accounts. I'm going to put that on the next one. Comicsgate imploding. That's what needs to be talked about here. What is going on? Apparently, Ethan Van Sciver made some sort of comments on his feeds. I don't watch his feeds too much anymore. And then, I guess Captain Cummings saw something that happened on one of the feeds, someone else. Now there's this all mix-up and some sort of tension between people, and I guess Ethan is pro-gatekeepers and other people are anti-gatekeepers. I don't really know what the whole story is. I do know that we should not have gatekeepers. I sent out a tweet. Captain Cummings actually gave me a little shout out in his last video that I watched from my tweet, and I was like, yeah, sweet. What I said about the gatekeepers is there shouldn't be gatekeepers, and that I got to remember my own tweet here. That we should be independent, and we're about freedom and encouragement. And the whole idea is that, look, it's okay to be opinionated and share your ideas. And it's okay to encourage people. I can say, you really should buy this book. Or I say, you really shouldn't buy that book. But it's left at that. If I say, Detective Comics 983 is really good, you should buy it, which is true. I went and actually found a alternate variant cover of this. It was all sold out, and I saw this on the store. So I was like, oh, okay. So this is the first comic I've actually bought twice since being back into comics, and that doesn't happen. So that alone should be high praise to say this is worth buying. And I will encourage you to buy it. But if you don't buy it, if you say, you know what, I have no interest in that comic, Ash, I'll be like, all right, cool. Go do what you do. That's not gatekeeping. I'm not going to get on Twitter and be like, oh, such and such is an idiot for not buying this comic. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's got no taste. That's a little bit different. If this book was terrible, and it was written full, and I was like, it's just full of SJW propaganda. It's just nonsense. Avoid this book at all costs. And you went and bought it anyway. I'm not going to get on Twitter and be like, oh my gosh, Joe Blow doesn't understand what he's doing. Look, he's buying these SJW comics. He must be an SJW or something. No, go buy them. If you enjoy them, you enjoy them. I will try to sway your mind with my opinions, and that's it. If you don't want my opinion, we move on. That's what it means, and that's where it's okay to be opinionated. What's not okay, what gatekeeping is what the SJWs do, and you say, this book sucks. Tom King, you turned Batman into a cuck, and I don't like it. And then SJWs block you and talk shit about you and say, don't buy our comics, you piece of shit, you're a Nazi. That's gatekeeping. Well, that's in part gatekeeping. There's more to it depending on what other aspects you're involved in. We're not like that. And I think that's what the mix-up is going on right now. I think there's some misunderstanding about what Ethan is seeing versus what people like Captain Cummings might be seeing, or other people. And they're all using kind of the same term, but in their mind, it's not the same definition exactly. So it's causing miscommunication. But who knows? I stopped following Ethan Van Sciver. Well, I didn't stop following him. I still subscribe to him. I have a lot of respect for the guy. And I think he's a brilliant, like I said at the beginning of the video, he's great at just straight up, just improv, just, what's that term where you just, live expression of thought, just constant stream of thought. He's great, got a great voice. He knows how to inflect really well. He's entertaining to listen to. I don't really listen to him precisely because of the content. He's gone on off the deep end with the Star Wars stuff. I happen to be someone who really enjoyed The Last Jedi, and I'll be happy to talk about it with anyone, but I don't push it on anyone. I realize that it's a widely hated movie by a certain group of people. Kind of makes me a little bit lonely because there's no one really on my side of things. If I say like Comicsgate stuff, most people who are Comicsgaters also tend to go side and side with Star Wars haters. So I'm like half of that, and I'm kind of alone. But what I don't like about what he does is he takes it from just trashing on what he doesn't like to basically bashing on the franchise as a whole. I mean, he was doing videos on hating Han Solo before the movie came out. Now, you can, when the movie comes out and you don't like it, make fun of it all you want. But when you're making videos to be like, this movie's going to suck, and that's not that wasn't entertaining to me. I want the movie to be good. I'm looking forward. I have fun with that excitement to anticipate the film. I don't want to get on and watch someone rant about how bad the film's going to be. It's just negative energy. Now, I don't say bad things about Ethan for doing it. I do bust his balls sometimes because I do think he's a bit of a casual fan and doesn't know much about Star Wars, and he often exposes this in his videos, and I chide him about it. And he's always been a really great sport. I think he's a good guy. And I really miss his comic videos. And I'm going to stay around and hear what he has to say. I'm just going to kind of avoid the content that doesn't interest me. But that's where I am about that. But what my point was, which was extremely long-winded, is Ethan, I think, is an opportunist. And that doesn't necessarily mean as a bad thing. But he jumped on this Star Wars thing because he had a fan base for it. He was doing his comic thing, and he was doing it basically kind of what I'm doing, where he just wanted to talk about the things he wanted to talk about. But man, he talked about Star Wars, and he got this raving reception. Whole new, wave of fans came in, and he realized, hey, wait a minute, there's an audience for this. People want to hear this, so he catered to that audience. Nothing necessarily wrong in that, just I'm not that audience. So with that, however, has come this sort of judgment mentality. He projects himself in the Star Wars avenue, kind of like a gatekeeper. He talks about, he has a lot of criticisms about Lucasfilm and who should be fired and da 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 da. I'm okay with that as an isolated, okay, it's over there. But if that crosses over into comics land, or even is perceived to, you're going to see issues. I think that might be what's happening. I think some of that hardcore critique and, anti-Star Wars is carrying to comics. But anyways, I want to wrap that up. I want everyone to hopefully just chill a little bit on the Comicsgate thing. I see a lot of tweeting going on. I think that's kind of driven more by the outsiders watching, making it bigger than it is. I think there's a live stream tonight from some of the people. I think this will all get settled. I think we're a group of people that can talk maturely and move on. I am kind of curious to see what it's all about because I am confused. Just to wrap up, thank you guys for watching this long. I know this is a long one. This is experimental. If you have any comments on how to do it better, I think one thing to do better is just have less topics, because I thought that would be short and it turned out to be long. Buy this book. Silencer I picked up. It was not on my pull list video because I didn't pull up my pull list, but I've wanted to add a little move the needle thing here. I was going to see Incredibles 2, which is, yeah. And I stopped by the comic book store, which is right next to the movie theater. I walked in. It's not my normal comic book store, but they had 1, 2, and 3 in the back issues for like $3.25 a piece. What? I was like, oh, geez, a steal. And they still had 4 and 5 on the recent wall, so $2.99, and then 6 on the brand new wall. So I was able to get all of them for basically cover price. And so Move the Needle works. Zach and a few others that have escaped my mind. A lot of people have recommended this book, so I apologize I can't name everyone else. I've recommended this, and I've been watching. I try to follow the Move the Needles. I love seeing what other people are into. So I'm picking it up. First 6 issues. I can't recommend it because I didn't actually read them yet, but I'm guessing those other people's recommendations are worth something. So thanks again for stopping by. I hope this wasn't too long. Or any comments you have, please put comments in. I listen to them. It helps me grow my show from a quality standpoint as far as doing things better. And I like to hear. I just like to hear what other people are saying about comics. So I hope to see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye.